From the implications of the drop in global oil prices to the ongoing impact of climate change, there is no shortage of headlines concerning issues related to the environment and energy. The Society of Environmental Journalists and the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program recently conducted their third annual discussion exploring some of the critical issues that will shape the new year. That's the focus of this edition of Rewind.
I believe the result of forums like this play a key role in establishing the national dialogue. And as we all know, national dialogue helps lead to public policy. So that's why your presence here today and the thousands of you I expect are watching online is so important.
Lisa, where do you see maybe with lots of talk about Paris in December, where do you see any insights from the climate talks? And maybe if you could talk a little bit about some of these bilateral deals we're seeing with U.S. China, what may come out of those?
If you care about climate change and international response to climate change, the first 2 weeks of December in Paris, France will be your Super Bowl. If this agreement happens, it will be fundamentally different than anything that has existed before in the climate regime.
Lisa, you've done a lot of work on food, and wondering where you see what are the challenges with agriculture and ecosystems and those areas.
I think that right now we'll see a lot of more action and activity around research and interest in how extreme weather events and our environmental health, the health of our soils, and global population growth will continue to affect our interconnections with food and water and energy and the environment.
Energy issues, we're already seeing they're taking center stage. Everyone's talking about the price of oil. But I'm wondering, where do you see $40 oil going? And maybe also if you could talk a little bit, where do you see, how does, given these economics, what do you do with these so-called transitional fuels and this move to renewables and so forth?
Well, the price of oil is certainly the talk of the town in the industry. It's pretty interesting, actually, from a Washington perspective. Politicians really don't talk that much about low energy prices. And it's interesting because it's sort of casting a bit of a dark cloud over a lot of the Obama administration's fuel efficiency standards, and the renewable fuel standard has a lot of issues with that, and I think low oil prices and just the plentiful supply of oil in general casts a darker shadow over that. As for my prediction on what oil prices are, I'm going to predict that they're going to stay low through the next year. I'm certainly not an expert economist on this topic, but what it seems like experts are predicting, I think Shell executives said they could be low for the next 2 to 3 years. So I think that's what you're seeing.
I'm wondering how will that science, that discussion about science on all levels, not just climate change, evolve, if it can, in this year?
People look to the EPA a lot as an arbiter on science, right? So what is going to be coming out in the next few months is the EPA's study on water and oil and gas development's effects on water. There's this whole discussion about does fracking affect water or not, and so EPA stepped in, I guess, several years ago to be the arbiter of that. And we were told that something would come out between February and April, and I think it needs to go through a peer review process. What that's going to look like and whether it's going to answer the questions that people seek, that they think that science will bring to this debate, remains unclear.
So certainly it's correct. Science is not going to resolve these issues, at least not in the public forum. It's really going to be a much tougher political process, hopefully informed by science. But the idea that the public is going to read the science and then make up their minds is simply not borne out by experience.
I think you also had the issue with science and the impacts of air pollution, climate change, and so forth. The issue of, are the impacts immediate? Are the impacts long-term? Are the impacts dispersed over many people? Are they concentrated? Do they affect certain sectors of the economy? And sometimes it's hard to generate action on these issues because the impacts are so widely dispersed and they don't get to some of the core constituencies that have strong lobbying presence in Congress and elsewhere.
We've talked about the role that science has in this, politics has in this. What about journalism in terms of framing what we do next? often newsworthiness is framed as conflict. What about the idea of these oblique angles, role models? Where do we go from here? Could you speak to the role of journalists in understanding our future as a species?
Right now, to me, what's driving it is the nexus of politics and policy, because when it's just policy, people really don't care, and editors really don't care. If it doesn't have who's up and who's down in politics, or if it doesn't have the bang bang of national security, not like climate change is really depressing. What dirge are you going to sing today about the planet, right? It's sort of totally depressing, and so it's a hard sell, and editors will come pat you in the back and say you've got the most important beat in the paper, the existential crisis, and then you have to. It has to have some kind of political angle for there to be coverage. And I think that is the issue. And I think what is going to make it the issue is if we start, I hate to say it, but it's going to be suffering, right? If things start hitting us, if we have Sandys, if we have droughts, that's what gets you into traditional media.
For more information on the Environmental Change and Security Program, the Canada Institute, the Global Sustainability and Resilience Program, and the Science and Technology Innovation Program, visit wilsoncenter.org and search under the Programs tab.